Do we have a remote? Is it that one?
Unfortunately, no.
Not?
So
Okay.
you have to use the.
Yeah, sure. That works. So thank Uni for the introduction. So Uni asked me to talk about certification in general, so product certification and why this is important. But as the profiles are just the base concept that all the certification is related to, I'm going to start to give you an introduction into profiles and facets and everything before we then go over to the certification portion. So what you've learned so far, or what you might already know, is that OPC UA is a big toolbox, right? So it's not just one specific use case that you can use OPC UA for, but it's a really big toolbox. So the question is, how do we define functions, features, how to scale things? And in order to do that, we in OPC UA do have the concept of profiles. So for the profiles, we do have multiple ways. So it's not just one thing that is called profile, but there are different sections, and I'm going to tell you that in just a second. The beauty here is with OPC UA that this information is discoverable by a client automatically at runtime. So that is the interesting portion here. So the way the profiles are structured in OPC is that we do have the smallest testable item that we call conformance unit. So the smallest testable item might be a complete object with all the properties and everything that is inside of that, but it might also just be one specific element of it. So it really is just the smallest testable item. Now with a testable item, of course, you do have all the test cases assigned to. So in a conformance unit, we do have the test cases. But now you need to group those smallest testable items to a specific functionality, to a specific feature, and give that a name. And that is exactly what profiles are. We do have two different kind of profiles. One is the full-featured profile, and another one is being called facets. And those are the baseline for certification. So when we take a look at that, I'm going to explain you now the difference between those profiles here. So when we talk about a full-featured profile, we talk about a profile that consists of everything that you need to have a full functional application. That means there's everything inside. In that case, we use a server as an example. You do have a protocol, you do have security, you do have the address space to browse through everything, to get the information that you want to need, or that you want to read, write, or subscribe. So a full feature profile really consists of everything you need to have a full functional product or OPC UA interface to such. Now, those full featured profiles can extend each other. So in this example, you see that the standard UA server profile is extending the embedded UA server profile. And it's extending that not by adding additional features, but it's extending that by scaling. So in that case, now a standard UA server does require a minimum of 50 sessions that need to be supported, for example. So that is full feature profiles. What we also do have are facets. So facets are a specific functionality that needs to get a name, like method calling. When you have a server that is exposing a method that a client is supposed to invoke, then you need to implement that specific functionality. And those facets can now be integrated additionally to such full-featured profiles. So you extend that by additional features that your product supports. And of course, they also can be combined. So if you combine the event subscription server facet and the method server facet, then you get the alarm and conditions. Because in order to have alarms and conditions, you need to, at one hand, have the events, and on the other hand, acknowledge them, confirm them, doing things like that, right? So that is the concept that we have for that. And that works for basically every functionality, every feature that is inside OPC UA. That also works for historical access, redundancy, structured data, and anything else. The same concept is being used in companion specifications. So we learned about companion specification from Andreas just earlier today, and they define the same thing. So they define profiles that tell you or tell a client that this companion specification has been integrated in this product. One of that, so one example here would be the PackML base functionality server facet, but also robotics or machine vision. Of course, there are also PubSub profiles, which are to some extent still under construction, but also already some released ones. So everything in PubSub is just being described the same way. Now, as you already saw, that can get a bit complex because of the big size of the toolbox OPC UA is. Now, the OPC Foundation has a so-called profile reporting tool that allows you to browse and navigate through the defined profiles. So when you go on the OPC Foundation website, you can basically take a look at all the different profiles and facets and see what is inside. And that helps you to see what, or to define what you need in your systems or in the products that you want to develop or buy. Now, as we already said, the beauty here is that this information is exposed by a server. So when you take a look at the server profile array, which is inside of an OPC UA server, then it tells you what it supports. So in that example, it's a standard UA server, as well as implementing the method server facet. Server does also expose its operation limits. So in case that, for example, for certain reasons, it does only allow to call or to put 1,000 nodes in a read request, that is also information that you get in during runtime from a server. So profiles are basically really the concept that we're using here. So that stays the same. It also is being used in the built-in security. OPC UA has multiple levels of security, and I hope that, as far as I know, most of you attended the conference this morning already, and I hope that you got an introduction into security as well. So what we do have here is a combination of algorithms, a combination of key lengths and everything, and all of that is being placed into profiles as well. We call that then security policies. So a security policy defines a specific algorithm, a specific key derivation algorithm, key lengths, and all of that. There are several security policies available today, and they may change in the future. So when there's a need for having additional security policies, we can extend that easily. And what also sometimes happens is that the OPC Foundation does deprecate weak policies over time. For interoperability, though, we always highly recommend to integrate every possible security policy so that the end users at the end can turn them on if they need that, right? So that ensures that interoperability. So they just should be deactivated by default, but manually being activated afterwards. Same concept is working for the authorization, and once again, that's also profiles that we're talking about here, and that is user tokens. So user tokens is the way that we describe, for example, whether you connect to a server using an anonymous user token, so just nothing, or if you connect using a username, password, or X509 certificates or anything else. So you see, those profiles are really the way that we describe functionality, and that is why every end user and every vendor needs to be familiar with this concept. So when we take all of that into consideration and think about the use case or the scenario that we are doing call for bidding, then what you would need to do is looking if there is a specific companion specification for that kind of product that you want to buy, that you want to use and take all the advantages from. So for example, when you're using a RFID reader, you ask for an RFID reader that integrates the AIM RFID specification. Then you have that as your baseline, because inside of that profile for that RFID reader, you have everything inside that it needs to do that companion specification. And now you need to take a look at what else do I need? What else do I require from my RFID reader? Does it, for example, need to support events? Then I need to add that profile to my call forbidding. If I want to have a specific security policy, I need to add that to my call forbidding as well. If I want to have a specific user token integrated, once again, I just add it to my call forbidding. And what you have at the end is a whole list of profiles that you have inside your call forbidding, and ask your vendors or suppliers to integrate those, or if the products support all of these. So that is the way that this works. And that is the baseline for certification, because that is exactly how we do that. So when a product comes to certification, it defines all the profiles and facets that it supports. And by having them, we do get all the conformance units, and with that, the list of test cases that need to be executed. So this is the baseline for certification, as well as your in-house testing, because the beauty of that, obviously, is you do have all the test cases defined for your internal testing as well, right? There's no secret. Now, when we take a look at certification, we need to think about why are we doing certification? What is the interest here? And there are different approaches. It really depends on where you're coming from. If you're an end user, then it's about quality, right? It's about the easiness of integrating a released product into your overall system. For a vendor, it's a higher quality that I can deliver to my customers. So the problem here is that as we have a global market, we do have different quality standards. So it's not necessarily that somebody will trick you or is trying to misbehave, but it might just be a misunderstanding of the specification or a misunderstanding of the interpretation of testing results. All these kind of things. And that is the problem that we are focusing here, and that is the problem we are solving. So with certification, we ensure that you have that predefined guidelines, quality guidelines ensured in every certified product. And that is what you can trust on when taking a look at that. This is being done by taking a look at 5 different categories during the certification process for any product that is being certified. And I'm going to guide you through all those 5 real quick. So the first thing is the compliance. Now, compliance for us is not only talking about the OPC UA core specification, so everything that the OPC Foundation is taking care of. But the compliance is also in the meaning of companion specification, as far as they do have test cases and a certification program associated with them. One example here is the oil and gas industry. That is, we do have a companion specification for them that is called MDIS. And for that MDIS, they do have a whole set of test cases defined, and they do certification together with the core functionality in the OPC Foundation certification labs. Now, when we test that compliance, we are executing tests to pass, tests to fail. What does that mean? That means that we're testing good cases, but we're also sending you junk. So we send the server a request that doesn't make sense and want to see if it behaves right or if it crashes. This is also with OPC UA not just a single step test, but it is multi-step. That is because in OPC UA, for example, when you want to test a certain behavior for data changes or for events or just a behavior after calling methods, then you need to get into a certain position before that, then you call something, and then you expect something, so it's always a multi-step process. Also, the problem here is that not everything can be automated. So there are a lot of manual test cases because OPC UA is not only defining behavior that you can automate, so not just on the communication path, but also on the application level. So this is the thing that we need to work with. And To make our lives easier as well as the vendors' lives easier is we developed a compliance test tool. So the OPC Foundation does provide that, and that already validates the basic OPC UA services. It validates the address space, it validates security, and all of that in more than 1,000 test scripts, and all of them run automatically. So that is the set that we can do automatically on every server that is out there. So if you want to ensure a high quality of your product, we can just encourage you to become at least a logo member of the OPC Foundation, get the CTT, and run it against your servers. Now, the beauty with that CTT is that it's extendable. That means you can add your own settings to it. You can write your own test scripts that are product specific. So really testing your specific use cases and using for that the library that the CTT does provide you. Second area is the interoperability. Of course, that is why OPC UA is here. What we do here is we test your product against a minimum of 5 products of other vendors. And other vendors means not just any other vendors, but different SDKs, different stacks, different programming languages. Different areas like PLC with a PLC and HMI with a PLC and so on. So we really ensure that you do have a high level of interoperability here. And when doing that, obviously we verify that all the UA services are working fine, but also data types are mapped correctly, that we do integrate the security policies and user tokens so that the integration for an end user at the end is as smooth as possible. The third area is the robustness, and that is basically the recovery from disaster. The problem here is that you have a lot of manual test cases in that area because OPC UA defines certain behavior for the data source as well. So when we are talking, for example, about a gateway or a sensor with, let's take a device with an external sensor, like an RFID reader with an antenna. If you intermit the connection, if you break the connection to that antenna, OPC UA tells you that the status codes of all the values that are coming from that antenna needs to change the status code to bad no communication. So that is nothing that you can do automatically, but it really provides the overall system important information. So that is something that can easily be overseen, and that is what you can ensure, or what you can be sure of that we find during certification testing. What else do we do here? For example, we verify that the problems are self-contained. So if we have 2 clients connected to a server and we break the connection to one data source, then we ensure that the other client is not infected by that, right? So that one still gets its update from the other antenna because that is what you expect, right? The problem needs to be self-contained here. And of course, also that the end user has the access to all that information, so that there is a tracing or logging capabilities somehow, right? So that you at least find out why something is not working here. Then we have the efficiency portion. The efficiency is our long-term test. And long-term just got extended, so it's not 36 hours anymore, but we run it 72 hours these days. And what we do here is we place the product under some loads. Now, some load is not that clearly defined because it really depends on the use case of the product. If that is just a small sensor providing a few data points, well, then it's just a few data points. If you claim that your server is a PLC and can handle 100,000 changing nodes, well, we're going to test that, right? So what we do here is we combine all the tests that we did before. We combine the compliance, the interoperability, and the robustness. Because then we really force some intermittent connection on a data source. We force an intermittent connection to one of the communication partners, let that run for 72 hours, and at the end see if there are any leaks in one of the resources like CPU, RAM, threads, handles, or anything else. Last but not least, we do have the section usability. Usability for us is just that we take a look at your documentation. Now that is Maybe sounds a bit strange when you first hear about that, but what we really want to do is ensure that you provide, or a vendor provides the information to the end user in the best possible way. So not missing important things on behalf of OPC UA, for example, certificate handling, because that can be quite complex. Now, as you see, certification in OPC UA is nothing that is just a documentation check, but it is a third-party testing by an engineer. So it is really somebody taking a look at the product and verifying it works correctly. And if a product passes all those test cases, it earns the Certified for Compliance mark, and that is what you see here. So that is a good indication for you to know that a product, or for an end user to know that the product went through this quality checks. And of course, the OPC Foundation has a certified product list, a catalog on its website. So go on their website and you will also find the history for that product. So if that one got certified multiple times, you can find that information and you see the commitment from that vendor. Now, what we also plan to do is we're going to extend the product catalog by additional information, which is the attended IOP workshops. IOP workshops in OPC UA are blockfests, so all the vendors are getting together and ensuring the interoperability between their products. So when you buy a product, or when you look a product up here that has attended a lot of different IOP workshops, that really tells you that this company is committed to interoperability, and it tested that and verified everything is working correctly and fine here. Of course, the vendor at the end does get a test report for all of that, and that is what I just can highly recommend to any end user to ask for. There's a test summary, and the test summary really tells you everything you need to know about a certified product, including comments from the test laboratory, certification laboratory, if there's something that they need to tell you, right? So that is the way to go. Ask for that test summary. The vendor obviously also does get a test record with a lot of more details, as well as graphs for the resource testing. Yeah, usually I do that presentation together with Uwe Steingross, who's unfortunately not here. But if you have any questions, you can trouble me now or tomorrow. I will be here tomorrow as well, or just write us a mail. Thank you.